Well, once again, my name is Lawrence Slatty, also as Mr. International. I host this meeting every Tuesday at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm located in the Bronx, New York. I have 6 units here in New York City. I'm also looking to scale and my business, and I'm looking in the Piedmont Triad area of North Carolina. Also looking at Huntsville, Alabama, and Norfolk, Virginia. Once again, I want to say thank you for coming. I appreciate everybody here. And tonight's guest is author. I don't know if everybody knows the book. They should by now. Multifamily investors who dominate. He's also a dad, a Porsche enthusiast, right? And a YouTube channel sensation. Right? I didn't meet him. I heard Beau Beery about 4 or 5 years ago. He was on a podcast talking about metrics, right? And it was amazing. I listened to that podcast like 4 or 5 times to get it all written down, right? And it was just a great day. So, Beau, I want to say thank you for coming on, right? Oh, I also meant to say he also has his own brokerage firm. He's a multifamily brokerage firm. He is. I'm saying this. I don't know if it's true, but I believe it is. He is the #1 broker in Florida right now, right? And if it's not, I'm speaking into existence. And he's here to teach us how to not only dominate in the multifamily space, but also how to stop missing out on deals. So, Beau, once again, I want to say thank you for coming on, taking time from your beautiful family. And there you go. Take it to you,
Yeah,
Beau.
man. No, I appreciate it. Thank you for the introduction. And just in case I have some other broker call me up with some BS. When I owned the Coldwell Banker Commercial, I was #1 in Florida. Every year I was there for the 10 years. And then I was in the top 3 in the world for Coldwell Banker Commercial. I sold that back to my partners, and now I just have my own little standalone boutique. But I appreciate the intro, man. And what I wanted to talk about tonight was I kind of put together like a top 10 tips that are just they're various tips, man. Things I see people doing wrong, things I see people doing right, how to win more deals, how to get brokers to bring you more deals. And so I just want this to be an open discussion. And Lottie, maybe if you can just, if you see someone raising their hand or whatever, and they want to poke a question at me along the way, totally cool. Just interrupt. We got 20 people here. We can do that. So I'll just pop into it. Let me see if I can get this thing to work. Yeah, sweet. So tip #1, if some of you have read my book, I talk about this thing in my book called the love factor. And the love factor is a real thing. It's an actual equation that you can track on a regular basis. And so what I teach a lot in my videos on the YouTube and in my book is #1, networking with brokers, because brokers control all the deals. Once you get over 10 units in the multifamily world, those are over 90% of the deals are done by brokers, because sellers know they can hire a broker, get 15 offers in 2 weeks. So why wouldn't you, right? And then the other thing I talk about is reputation in the business, right? You want to become the type of investor that brokers are salivating and sellers are salivating to come to you before they even go to the market. That's the whole idea. And what love factor is an equation. The denominator is the total number of sales in a market. So for instance, let's say you're a guy who buys 10 to 50 unit deals, conventional in Florida. And if I showed you a list that had 100 sales that are in that range, that are in Florida, and you only saw 8 of them, you have a really crappy love factor, because that means you aren't seeing all the deals, right? Your love factor would be 8%, right? And your goal is, the most elite investors in the world that I work with, they're seeing 80% or more of the transactions that come to market. And a lot of times what I've seen, Lottie, is that the difference between these people who own 500 units, 1,000 units, 10,000 units, and anybody maybe on this phone call is not that they underwrite better or they're smarter. or they know how to do the financing part of it more. All those things can be learned. That ain't a big deal. The difference is they're seeing a lot more deals than you, right? People have, brokers and sellers, and the marketplace has fallen in love with them because they're closers. They don't retrade. They do all the things right. They're gentlemen, they're gentlewomen, and so people gravitate towards people they want to do business with, right? Mm-hmm. And brokers bring them deals ahead of time. And so your goal is, and I have a spreadsheet on my website, beaubeery.com, that's a love factor spreadsheet. You can begin tracking transactions in your marketplace now and tracking how many you saw, whether they were emailed to you, whether they were texted to you, you saw them on a website, they were email blasted, a broker called you about it and told you about it, whatever it was. Over time, you can track your love factor. That's a really good, easy way to make sure you're doing all the right things, okay? So here's the book, and there's a bunch of other stuff in there that you can read on there, including the spreadsheet, the love factor spreadsheet. While I was talking, that's the equation right there. Total number of properties you saw for sale in the marketplace divided by the total number of closings that actually happened, right? And then converting it to an actual percentages times 100. Tip number 2, this is a totally different route, is I want to talk to you about spam blockers. So this is kind of a crazy thing that none of us talk about or none of us know about. But brokers, by the nature, we send out lots of emails, right? We send out new listings. We send out things we closed about. We send out market reports. We send out, bullshit chest beating stuff that we're the best, all the things that you get from emails, right? And what happens is, the whole world is the email system is in a cloud-based system. So there's a server that's up in the clouds that all emails pass through before they get to your local server, right? And a lot of brokers, because they send so many emails, sometimes the world spam blocker labels them as a blacklist or someone who is not a good person or whatever. And it's oftentimes not true, but because they send so many emails, sometimes it triggers their algorithm to block those emails. But let's say if it gets past that and then comes to your local server, right? So Gmail, Hotmail, your work server, whatever it is, your personal server also has spiders and algorithms to determine whether or not someone's email is spam. I say all this to say that your love factor is never going to be accurate because unless you are whitelisting every broker's email to come through to you. These brokers may be sending you deals right now and you're not seeing them at all. I know because I've been on this list before. Gmail, I'm still trying to get correct with portions of Gmail, right? Because I send lots of emails. Now, these are emails to my customers, but because I have lots of customers and send lots of emails, I've triggered the algorithm. And many brokers have, whether I've used third-party email companies or not. So the tip here is you need to find out every broker that sells multifamily in the markets you work in. Go through MLS, go on websites, Google them, CB Richard Ellis, Marcus and Millichap, Colliers, get all these brokers. And in my book, I talk about how to network with them. But right now, get their emails, whitelist them. Like for Outlook, it's simply right-clicking and putting safe to senders. If it's a work server that you're working from, tell your IT guy, approve all these guys. This is the easiest thing you can do to see more deals, but nobody ever thinks about it because you don't see it. Like you don't even get to not approve an email that's coming through because the world server is catching it. Okay, well, I guess that wasn't tip number 2. That was just a free tip. Tip number 2, all right? Class B, that is the ultimate classification to buy. Now, what I'm not going to tell you is don't concentrate on just B. You need to go after all asset classes. But let me tell you why B is the best. I did a study. I did a 2-year study about a year and a half ago where I studied the jumps And I classify all multifamily as A, B plus, B, B minus, C plus, C, C minus, right? And what I determined was from a C minus, which would be a really bad location, high crime, you don't want to be there, you don't care what time of day, right? That's a C minus. C, to go from a C minus to a C, or a C to a C plus, or a C plus to a B minus, meaning when you buy them, renovate them, and resell them, there is only about a $15,000 to $20,000 a unit jump, which is okay. So if you bought something at $60,000 a unit, you spend $6,000 a unit renovating it, you get the rents up, you should be able to sell it within a reasonable amount of time and make $12,000, $15,000 a unit. Ain't nothing wrong with that. But to go from B minus, okay, to B, or B to B plus, you're talking about $40,000, $45,000 a unit jumps. It's big time, right? And it's big rent jumps too, right? I mean, you got a couple $100 here, you got a couple of dollars here, you got a couple $100 to go up to the next one. Whereas in the C minus to C, C to plus, C plus, C plus, C but minus, they're not as big of jumps. They're $80, $100 jumps. Now, what classifies, a B from a C? A lot of it is the amount of the rent, and it's all market specific, right? Miami will be different from New York to Florida, but it's mostly its age and its rents, its locations, and it's the quality of the assets and the finishes themselves, right? So B classes can be 1970s if they're in a really good location, and they're usually in the $1,000 a month range in my Florida areas, right? And so on and so forth. This is the percent of transactions that are of this classification. So for instance, there's only 3 to 5% of closings are B plus, 15 to 20 here. So you got 15, 24, you got anywhere from 25 to 35% of transactions are B class. I believe it's like 70%. Let's see, I think it's 60% are C class, a lot of C class transactions, but there's really good bumps in buying the Bs. Here's a specific example. This is a deal in my market where someone bought it in 2013 for $130,000 a unit. And then they sold it 6 years later, $190 a door. This is actually in Jacksonville for my boy over there in Jacksonville. This is registry at Windsor Park. If you go on the property appraiser, you'll see what I'm talking about. This was a perfect B class triage that was done. Awesome. Tip number 3, covering enough geography. So what I mean by this is I have found that even very good investors, but more so beginning to intermediate investors, they call me up and they're like, hey, Beau, I'm based in Jacksonville and I'm looking at picking up, under 50 unit assets in Jacksonville. I like market rate. I don't want it to be older than 1980, blah, blah, blah. And what a lot of folks don't know is how few number of sales actually happen in any one market. And the reason this is the case is because all of us are connected on LinkedIn and Facebook with other people of like kind. We're all connected to other multifamily people, right? Like if you go on your LinkedIn and look at contacts, every one of them is another multifamily investor. They're brokers, they're lenders, and then we're all part of multifamily groups, right? Who are all multifamily guys. And so what happens is we go on LinkedIn and we see this guy is closing here, this guy is closing there, this guy's doing a due diligence walkthrough, this guy's taking a picture of himself at a closing table. This guy, it's just the mind is just killed with all this activity that's happening. But the mind doesn't decipher is that this is stuff that's happening all over the country. But the mind thinks it's happening like hundreds of transactions in Jacksonville, and it's not the case. The reality is only 6 to 8% of inventory sells per year in any one market, right? So for instance, in Gainesville, where I'm based, there are only 73 apartment complexes that are market rate over 100 units. So that's why we only have 5 or 6 sales over 100 units in our entire market. 300,000 people, hot markets, a great secondary market, right? I believe Jacksonville has like 350 100+ unit deals. right? So you're talking about 25 or 30 deals done a year there. And my man who there is on this call from Jacksonville, you probably see skyscrapers going up, construction's going on all over the place. You get emails from brokers about closings left and right. Ain't but 25 or 30 being done a year, right? So my point here is that the people who are really doing this, who are buying lots of stuff, and it sounds like from this phone call, from your all's introductions, you've got this part down. You've got to cover enough geography, because the whole thing is love factor, right? You've got to see enough deals that, based on the probability of you gaining enough market share of those number of deals, gives you a higher probability of actually closing on assets. But if you're just siloed in Jacksonville and you're trying to pick up stuff, you're only going to pick up a deal once a year, every 2 or 3 years, right? And so, but the key is not just covering enough geography, but covering enough and being able to master it, right? If it's just you and you don't have assistants and partners and other people, you can't just cover an entire state of Florida, because then you'll never master any one market. So you want to cover enough geography to see enough deals, but be able to intellectually master the market, meaning you know what rents are, you know what the rents are going to be in 3 years, you know what you can sell it for in 3 years. You have contacts with renovation specialists, with attorneys, with lenders, property managers. I should be able to call you at any time and tell you about an apartment complex in a certain submarket that's coming available in a market that you're in, and you know right off the bat what you should be able to buy it for. You know what the renovations are going to cost. You know what you could take the rents to. You know approximately what you think you can sell it for in 3 to 5 years. That's the kind of shit you want to know in every market you cover, okay? Because this game's about speed. When I bring you a deal as a broker, right, you have to be able to react fast. There's going to be 10 offers in 3 weeks. And if you're spending 2 of those 3 weeks learning a new market, you're toast. Tip number 4, stop concentrating on cap rates, man. I can't tell you how many times when I come out with a listing, someone calls me up and they're like, hey, before I sign the CA, what's the cap rate? I already know I got someone who don't know what the hell they're doing. This is not a cap rate business. You're buying assets so that you can add value, so that you can increase rents, so that on the back end, you can sell for a higher NOI, right? And that's what people want. People want cash on cash and IRR. Your whole world needs to be based on those 2 things. More so IRR, but cash on cash is also very, very important. And so when you're analyzing deals and you see, but my whole point is when you get an email emailed to you, or you got a broker that calls you, or you see something on the website and you see a 4 cap, don't just delete it, because that's what everybody's doing, right? Everyone's deleting the 3 cap or the 4 cap. But if you take the time to dive deeper, and you're diving deeper because there's not a whole lot of deals out there. I just told you that there's very few number of transactions that actually happen. If you dive a little bit deeper, look at the actual financials that came out. Check out the rent comps, check out the sales comps. Could you take the rents to there? What kind of vacancy factors being used? You know, don't rely on what the broker's calling something a 3 or 4 cap, because you may see something that could be a 6 or 7 cap in 2 or 3 years after renovations. Okay. IRRs, the longer you hold something cures everything. So just pay attention to realistic cash on cash and IRRs. Now I'm saying don't force an IRR to tell you a story to justify a purchase. That's dangerous. All I'm saying is dive deeper, stop looking at cap rates. Don't care about them one bit. Number 5, touring the asset. Let me tell y'all something. I know this is hard, especially for y'all looking at deals all across the country or in the next city over, the next state over. When you are analyzing a deal, if you turn in a good enough offer on the call for offers, that will likely get you into the best and final. Everybody knows what that means. A call for offers means that's the date at which the broker sets the initial offers are to come in. And then if you're the chosen one who gets to go to the next round, that next round is called the best and final. And that's when the seller and the broker is going to choose the final winner. Okay. Touring the asset with the broker and possibly the seller, though that's rare, but touring that asset with the broker before you submit an offer is the most ideal thing you can do. Okay. Because brokers who are buyers who just submit offers blindly and we don't already know you or haven't already met you or haven't already had substantial conversations with you, you're already in a subservient position. You just are. We don't know you. We don't know how to sell you to the seller. Now, if you don't have the time, money, and effort to drive to every asset that you're offering on the initial offer and you want to make to best and final, that's okay, but your offer has to be good enough to get to best and final. If you get to best and final, there's usually anywhere from a 2 to 5 day period between the call for offers and the best and final. I would get your ass on a plane. That's crucial, man. I'm telling you, if you get face to face with that broker, shake their hands, go to lunch, talk about the market, talk about, get to know them a little bit more. Hey, what are you doing this weekend? And, oh, you like cars, or, oh, you do this, or, hey, I saw you and I know so-and-so together on LinkedIn. Like, get that bond, man. That's your salesperson. You're not going to get to meet the seller, talk to the seller ever. You can't go around the broker. You won't be able to ever talk to him. The broker is your salesman right now. He's the person on your side. He wants you to win the deal, right? But the people who never show up and give face, it's really hard for those guys to win unless they've met prior or done prior deals. Very important. Number 6, having a bio package. So this video right here, this green YouTube video, I actually created a 2-part series on my YouTube channel. I have playlists on my YouTube channel. I have a playlist for beginners, and the first couple on there, it's actually it's maybe a couple years old now, but it's still pretty relevant. I talk about how to put together a bio package. This is really important, especially when you're making your initial phone calls to brokers and you're introducing yourself and you're talking about your criteria and you're talking about deals you want them to bring you. Being able to hang up the phone and then send them a bio package is super important. So the first thing I talk about is putting together a cover letter and your bio. If you aren't doing multifamily full time, talk about maybe what you do for a living, how that relates to your, to buying investments. But hey, here's about me, here's where I'm from, here's who I'm connected to, here's my partners, here's my partner bios, here's how long we've been together. Just kind of this is a little bit showing a little bit about your personality, a little bit about your background. And the reason you're doing that is you want a connection, right? Like me as the broker and the seller and the seller's partners possibly may read something in there and be like, oh, yo, he went to Stanford or he went to FSU or whatever, like, or he went to this fraternity, or he worked at this company. I used to work at that company 20 years ago. Just something. It just increases the probabilities of, I like this dude, right? Yeah, here, I mean, this is, this is the same stuff right here. So like when you turn these bio packages, the broker and the sellers are checking you out, right? We're going to go on Facebook. We're going to go on LinkedIn. We want to learn more about you. We want to see how active you are. We want to hear about the assets you own as well. So list of assets owned. That's helpful. Even if it's just some single family assets or whatever it is, and you're buying your first multifamily, it at least shows that you have transaction history, right? Letters of recommendation from brokers and lenders are super powerful. Even if it's from single family, duplex, quadruplex deals, and you're now buying 10 and 15, 20 plexes, whatever it is, dude, let me tell you, those are powerful because I told you how small this world is, right? Let me give you a for instance, if you haven't read this in some of my stuff. In the entire northern half of Florida that I cover, and I'm talking about Tallahassee, Jacksonville, St. Augustine, Daytona, New Smyrna, Ormond, DeLand, Deltona, Daytona Beach, Deltona, Lake City, Gainesville, Ocala, Lakeland, Winter Haven, all those markets, the whole northern half of Florida, there's only 1,967 assets over 10 units. That's conventional, that's student housing, that's affordable housing, only 1967. And those 1967 are owned by only 998 people in the world. Florida, top 5 market in the world for multifamily, only 998 people control all that. And guess what? The top 5% own like 26% of the inventory, right? And I can give you some more stats. Actually, if you go to my website, beaubeery.com, scroll down on the landing page, you'll see some stats that'll blow your damn mind about how few people control the most number of assets. I say all this to say that it's even smaller of a world in brokers and lenders. For the entire northern half of Florida, there's only about 50, 55 multifamily brokers that work that entire northern half of Florida. And if you know the 80-20 rule, 20% of us or 12 of us are doing all the deals. The lenders numbers are a little bit higher. There's thousands of lenders, but there's only a few number of really good lenders that these guys go to all the time. I say this to say that any broker you deal with or have done a deal with in the past, I don't care if it was 7 years ago, call them up if you had a good transaction and say, hey, would you mind writing a letter of recommendation on that deal we did 4 years ago? I'm looking to buy in some multifamily. You're a great broker. People know you, and I want to have a recommendation from you. Write it for them and have them sign it. But those are powerful because when I can turn all that in, again, the seller is likely to have done a deal with one of those brokers or know one of those brokers, and they're going to have me call that broker, and we're going to conference call them and talk about you and how you did in those transactions. That could be the edge. I just did a deal, $11.6 million in November last year, 12-story tower in Gainesville, tallest apartment building in Gainesville. And we got an offer from a guy who I had not done a deal with. I knew of him, but not done a deal with him. He turned in a crazy good offer. There were a few that were comparable, but it was a good offer. And he had a hard deposit day one, never showed up to the tour, right? Which is a big red flag for me. And put up hard money day one. And so I was like, man, that's crazy. So I asked him, have you done some deals with the brokers? He said, yes. He said, so-and-so and so-and-so. I knew one of the so-and-sos. Called him up. He's actually a broker in Jacksonville. My Jacksonville boy on here, you might know him. John Rutherford. Called up John and said, John, got this guy who just turned in an offer. He said, you did a deal with him. Listen, this guy haven't showed up to a tour, turned in an offer that's almost too good to be true. Never met him, what's the deal? He's like, Beau, he did the same thing with me, man. Never showed up, but signed the contract, closed, no peeps, no retrades, no nothing, right? Called the other guy, the other broker, same thing. These are powerful to get letters. And we chose him and the dude closed. And now I'm doing a $58 million deal with him. Just signed a letter of intent with him 2 days ago. All right, tip number 7, no informal offers. What I mean by that is I get these bullshit email offers, right? So, call for offers is coming up and they email me like a bullet point, like, hey, we'll pay X, 30-day due diligence, 30-day close, $100,000 deposit, and that's it. Like no letter of intent, no cover letter, no information about them. They haven't toured, haven't called me. Oftentimes these jokers don't even sign a confidentiality agreement, haven't gotten the financials. Don't be one of them. If you've put the effort to actually underwrite an asset, and we all know how long that takes to get to know an asset in order to write an offer, put it together in a letter of intent, right? Put some effort to it, put a little cover letter to it, put a little bio to it, put some letters of recommendation, something, to make it more than just an email offer. Those are jokes to me. What I do is by law, I still have to present offers because it's written. So I'll put it on my spreadsheet of offers, but I'm going to put a little asterisk. This guy emailed me the offer, wasn't written, very informal. All right, so let's get into some offer term tips. Y'all are going to like this stuff. You're going to like some of it. You're not going to like some of it. All right, no financing contingency. This is going to be the first one you don't like. Let me hit some water real quick. Now, I want you to know that what I'm about to tell you, I do not encourage you to do something you are not comfortable with. All right. A lot of you on here are newer. A lot of you that if something went wrong, this would be catastrophic. But I'm telling you, from 10 units to 1,000 units, it is rare these days I am seeing anybody win a deal that has a financing contingency in their offers, because the odds are 8 other people don't. Now, what that means is these people are not turning in offers blindly and just risking their entire livelihood. These are people who have close enough relationships with enough lenders. They're comfortable enough with each other's underwriting, and they always show up. The lender always shows up with the money on time. They underwrite it. They believe in their buyer that they're funding. and they've got enough time from the start of contract to close to know that the lender's going to be there for them. The lender believes in the buyer. And so they've gotten comfortable enough with each other that even that they're always going to show up to closing. And so as soon as you put a financing contingency in, it puts you in a difficult position. Because if anybody else has remotely a comparable offer, who are we going to go with? We're going to go with the guy who's not going to be contingent on financing and appraisal. Now, again, these folks are also in a risky position. Let's say that the lender comes back and only can do a 65% loan to value instead of a 75% loan to value. The buyers are prepared for it. Okay. So your goal, and I'm not saying to do this right off the bat, your goal is to get to a place with your lenders, with your equity, with your skill set, with your knowledge of an asset, to not make a contingent on financing. And part of that is you have to get good at your underwriting. You have to know that it's going to appraise. And most of them do these days, especially if it's listed by a broker who's good at what they're doing. They know exactly how buyers and lenders underwrite. And that's how we're listing deals. We don't want to list deals that can't get financed. How many deals do you hear about today that fell apart because it didn't get financed? Doesn't happen. Huge deposits. So this is a big pet peeve of mine. Let's say you're looking at a $2 million acquisition, right? For some reason, there are these teaching organizations out there that have used this 1% rule. I don't know where it comes from, but unlearn it, okay? If you're going after a $2 million deal and you put down a $10,000 first deposit and a $10,000 second deposit, that doesn't make any sense to me, okay? Because in 60 days, when you close on that $2 million deal, you're going to have to put down 600 grand. So why not show strength? It's free to show strength. Put down a $100,000 deposit. Put it down as much money as you and your partners and or syndication can do, because it shows strength. It shows that you're going to be there. If you're going after a $2 million deal, a seller doesn't feel comfortable, you won't walk away on $20,000. Because if you get into a pinch and it's not what you think it is down the road, you may walk from 20 grand, right? But you're not going to win deals on 20,000 on 1% deposits. So I can't tell you what the number is, but I would get as big as possible. If you're looking at a $5 million deal, I do 100 and 100, right? Again, on the $5 million deal, you're gonna have to put down over $1 million anyway, 60 days from now. And if you can't put down 100 and 100, that's a red flag to me as a broker. That means you don't have the money and you have to go raise it from, you don't even have 200 grand. You have to go raise it from syndications. So show strength off the bat if you can. Okay. 30 and 30 on DD and closing. That's pretty much the standard these days. 30-day due diligence, 30-day close. The closing days is not as important, but most of the time, if you're looking at one asset, 30-day due diligence is about as long as you want to go. And you could get away with a 45-day closing if you wanted to. As long as you got big deposits and they go hard after 30 days, the seller can give you a 45-day close. They're not going to mind that much, right? If you're looking at 3 assets in a market, you might be able to get a 45-day due diligence, right? And a 30-day close or a 45-day close. If you're looking at 3 or 4 assets across multiple markets, you might be able to get a 60-day due diligence, right? Because there's travel time and you have to organize different folks for the due diligence. So there's some leniency there, but I would try for no more than 30 and 30, 30 and 45, somewhere in there, depending on your deposit structure. No closing extensions. Man, I hate closing extensions. Sellers hate closing extensions. Anybody on this phone right now who I'm representing as my seller, when someone turns in an offer that says 30-day due diligence, 30-day close, 2 30-day closing extensions, right? It's distasteful. What that says to any seller is 30-day due diligence, 90-day close. So now it's 120 total days to close. Don't do that. Everyone knows you're going to exercise them. If you need the extra extensions, pay big money for them maybe, or give a little bit, some sort of a concession or something, but I would do away with them if you can altogether. It's just a cheap way. Don't use business days. It's another cheap thing, right? We all know what it means. I just got this the other day. I got 30-day, 30-day due diligence, 30 business day close, as if the seller's going to miss that, right? It's like he's going to review the contract and overlook that it's business days, which basically means 45 or 50 calendar days. What happens is it just sets the tone wrong right off the bat, because it looks like you were trying to pull a fast one, right? And now what it also does is it triggers the human brain, the seller brain, and it triggers the seller's attorney's brain that now I don't like this guy. I don't trust this guy. I'm now going to review every single word of that PSA at nauseum. And I'm going to be looking to redline the hell out of stuff because this dude did business days, right? I would get rid of business days. All right. And then your letter of intents, try to make them 2 pages or less, because you're trying to make this easy for the seller and the broker to choose you. I get these letter of intent sometimes, and yes, it's sometimes from bigger organizations, but it's 5 pages and every paragraph is protecting their ass with language that's insane. It should be reserved for a PSA. Make it easy. The guy we just chose for the $58 million deal, he had 4 bullet points, right? It was price, due diligence, closing, and deposits. It was so simple, right? And the dude's a closer, right? So make it 2 pages or less if you can. And a cover page could be a 3rd page, but 2 pages or less. You want people to, no one wants to read books. Tip number 9. This is going to be one I'm going to have to explain, right? So let me just go back to tip number 8, so you don't have to look at my man right here flexing the whole time while I'm talking. But just know that we're talking about pay max price. So here's what I mean on tip number 9. Now, before I explain this tip, you're going to be rolling your eyes thinking, this broker, of course, he wants us to pay the biggest price on the planet, right? That's what's going to be in your mind. But let me tell you why I'm telling you to pay the absolute max price you can. So here's what I mean by this. When you're underwriting an asset, okay, and y'all are in your home right now and you're going through your pro forma and you're creating your calculations, let's say you're looking at, again, I'll use a $2 million example, and you've underwritten this thing, and in your pro forma, let's say the pricing guidance from the broker is $2 million. And you made it to best and final, and you've called back the broker and you've talked to the broker, and the broker thinks 2.150 will get it done. But you've done your underwriting and you've done a risk analysis, and your underwriting is telling you that you can pay 2.3 million, right? I'm telling you, pay 2.3. If 2.3 meets your cash on cash, your IRR, it's gonna be an asset that's singing a year from now, and in 5 years from now, it's gonna make you really, really happy. Pay 2.3, because you don't get a second chance, right? No one's gonna come to you when it's all said and done and someone else got chosen, and they're gonna be like, Angel, let me tell you, what a great job you did, Angel. You got second place among 15 offers. Such a wonderful job. Here's $500,000 for your efforts. Ain't nobody going to do that. You're going to lose the deal, and the other guy is going to make $800,000 when he sells in 3 years. And you cheaped out over 150 grand. So asking the broker what he thinks it's going to go for, he's only able to tell you what he thinks it's going to go for at that time based on those offers. But everyone's going to be turning in their best and finals in the last minute because they don't want the broker shopping around his offer. So pay the max price. You want to pay a price at which, if you lose, you think the other person is an idiot, right? You can't figure out how that buyer is making that number work. You want to offer a price at which, if you lose, you're totally cool. Like you walked off the field and you left it on the field. Because I ain't coming to you afterward and patting you on the back, right? So I'm telling you guys, it's the biggest mistake. The number one mistake I see people make is cheaping out. I call it the garage sale mentality. If you've ever listened to any one of my other podcasts, you walk into a garage sale, you see a widget for sale for $1. And what do all of us do? We're like, hey, will you take 80 cents? Right? And the guy will be like, I mean, maybe, right? And so that mentality we carry over to multifamily. The difference in multifamily is at that garage sale, the equivalent at that garage sale is you got 11 people standing behind you, hoping your dumbass turns in 80 cents, right? Because they're about to come in at $1.10. They're about to tell that dude, yo, I'll give you $1.10 because it works in my pro forma. That widget I take home, my wife's going to be happy with that widget at $1.10. Pay the money, man. I'm telling you, like base hits, it's what it's all about. If you're trying to hit home runs on every deal, you're going to hit a home run every couple of years. But I know dudes who are hitting base hits, and they've got 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 units. In this game.
Beau, can I ask you a question? This is
yeah.
in Miami.
Yeah.
Beau, let me ask you a question on that note. And this is something, again, I'm a broker and an investor as well. What do you think, or what's your view on actual legitimate retrades? In other words, you did the inspection, and again, you know, I'm a broker and I'm an investor, so I see both sides. Actual legitimate retrades, when you find, you know, issues with a property, with the physical inspection, with the actual numbers, you know, that the seller, you know, represented one thing, then you go in and see that, you know, those numbers are not actuals. What do you think about that? What's your view?
Man, I love that question, Javier. I love that question. I love answering this question. All right. So here's the deal, y'all. Let's say again, I'll use $2 million. You're looking at a $2 million deal and you get into due diligence, and I don't care what it is that comes up, but let's say it's something legit that is a $50,000 cost. Maybe it's he misreported some expense, a pipe burst, whatever it is, right?
Right.
The answer to retrade or not has nothing to do with principle. And what I mean by that is it doesn't matter whose fault it is. It doesn't matter that it's the seller's problem or the seller caused it or the broker accidentally misrepresented something, purposely misrepresented something. It doesn't even, none of that even matters. What matters is the competition, right? So if I'm the broker for the seller, Javier, and you call me up and you say, yo, Beau, $50,000 thing just came up, right? I'm already thinking about Sam, John, Angel, Lawrence, Richard, and Jerry, who had just as good offers as you. And I'm already thinking about making those next phone calls and saying, hey, Jerry, I'm in the middle of a deal with Javier. They're now wobbling a little bit over such and such thing that came up. Yes, you didn't know about it either, but now that you know about it, if Javier doesn't step up, are you willing to come on for $50,000 for that $50,000 issue? Hell yeah, I'm ready to come on. So that's what you're up against. That's number one. Number two, here's the other thing. Here's another thing. If you plug in that $50,000 deal into your pro forma, your model, and it still leaves you with an IRR and a cash on cash that you can live with, move forward, right? So what I see though in this industry is everyone has such big egos and they get principle oriented. That ain't my problem. You didn't tell me about that $50,000 issue. Seller, you need to come off 50 grand. That ain't my problem, right? The reality is there's lots of people waiting in line to take your place, and they're probably going to take your place. Or he's going to decline the deal, relist it, and find someone else who will, and maybe they'll reveal it, maybe they won't, right? Commercial is a caveat emptor. They don't have to reveal shit. It's buyer beware, right? So,
not if it's like collapsed drain pipes and stuff, because those are EPA things.
if you are a buyer and you ask directly about a certain problem and the seller lies about it or knows about it and lies about it, you are correct. If he doesn't know about it, it's buyer beware. If you close on it later on and find out that there's a pipe that burst and can't find any evidence that the seller ever knew and the seller didn't know, that's the way, that's the government assumes in commercial real estate that the buyer knows what they're doing and they did their due diligence. Unless a seller is lying or knew about something and there is proof, it's buyer's problem. But to go back to your question, Javier, it's what's your competition, and does the issue still exist? Does the issue change your returns to a significant level?
What about when the seller says, okay, Beau, I see, we have a line of people just waiting in line, but won't John, Jerry, and Bob do inspections? We're going to waste 30 more days and they're going to find the same issues and ask for the same, ask for the same retrade for the same issue.
No, I'm going to the buyers right off. I mean, I don't I don't know sellers who want to go through that headache and not reveal it. They now know it. I now know it. I'm not going to not tell others about it, whatever it is, right?
Right.
Because for your same reason, if it was obvious to find, why waste 30 days to get to the same position? I'm going back to the buyers and saying, hey, this came up. Where do you stand on it? Because you may be next in line.
Okay, and on that
now,
question,
but to your point, it may be worth the seller concessing.
Yeah,
right? It depends on the size. It depends on the size of the issue. I may tell the seller, like, listen, dude, it's 50 grand. This is a solid buyer. Hey, Mr. Seller, if I can get the buyer to go hard after you concess the 50 grand, we know we got a buyer because we've got X number of dollars in deposits. Mm-hmm. I've done a deal with this dude before. It just makes sense. I'm definitely going to go for that, but it depends on the size of the issue, the issue of the issue, if you will.
So there's a question here, Beau, from Angel. Mm-hmm. You're talking about buying the property at max price that you can, right? The question is, what about when you pay $5 million and appraisal doesn't even come close?
You got to come up with the rest. If you have most of these folks don't have if you won the offer, the high likelihood is you didn't have a financing contingency. And if it didn't appraise, you're still getting financing. You're just not getting as much financing and you're going to have to put down more money.
Yeah, but that means your numbers don't work and people don't want to invest with you now.
Right. Yep.
So sometimes putting down that max offer gets your ass in a crack.
I mean, it could, but I don't ever see it happen. For you to be that far off where it didn't appraise, I just don't ever see it happen.
Well, it happened to me.
That sucks.
Yeah, it does.
That sucks. Did you back out or did you? That was funny. Did you back out or did you close?
Actually, we had to send way more information of other things that had sold and give them accurate comps.
Yeah.
And run a reappraisal.
Yep.
But it wasted time, it wasted energy, and it was a big, huge headache on an already horror ride of a deal.
Yeah. But you would have never even had that chance to do any of that, most likely, if you had a financing contingency or you didn't pay max price. Like that got you in the deal.
I'm not sure we didn't, because it was 5 months to close. We'd already gone through 2 extensions. We paid additional for an additional time period. We changed teams 3 times.
What kind of asset is it? What size?
72.
Yeah. Yep. I still suggest max price, period. Because you got to be good. You got to be good enough at your underwriting. I mean, if the appraisal would have to, what you're saying is an appraisal would have to come back so far off that the differential on what you're paying and what the financing is and the amount of money you have down, it's so substantial that it threw your numbers off enough that it made a difference. And that's a substantial amount of money.
Well, when you're pushing max offers, you don't have a lot of room for error. And an appraisal that comes in that low is an error.
Yeah, I agree. But that's your fault. In other words, you didn't underwrite it right. I mean, you had, my point is you had to have underwritten it so improperly that the difference between what the appraiser put it at and what you bought it at makes a difference. Right? It had to have been,
I'm going to bite my tongue here because I really don't appreciate you saying that about my appraiser, but we'll just leave it at that.
I'm speaking truth. My point is, if you paid a number and your appraisal was that different, then the underwriting was not done appropriately.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you, everyone. Well, please continue.
Yeah. All right. Number 10. So this actually goes into what Javier just brought up, which is don't sweat the small stuff. Meaning when things come up during a contract, when things come up, whether it's title, pipe burst, whatever, it's going back to the IRR to make the most decisions and looking at what your competition is. So not getting righteous, not being principle oriented, looking at the financial end of things. Don't sweat the small stuff. That's my 10 tips. You want to do questions?
So I have a question, Beau, before you begin, right? Of all the 10 tips, the first, what's the most important tip of all the 10 tips? What is the most important tip?
I mean, it's being true to your pro forma. It's paying what you should pay. I mean, listen, there's a bunch of other tips that's not on here, which is about, it's networking with brokers, it's your reputation, it's not retrading, it's building a presence, through social media, through the market, through closings. There's a whole bunch of things that go into, to actually getting deals to come to you. But if we're talking about transactional, the biggest mistake I see is people being cheap on their offers. And the reason I know it happens so often is because when I choose the winning buyer, right, from the seller's mandate, I get the calls from those who lost after it's closed. And they're like, oh, I so wish I could have come up $200,000. I would have paid $200,000 more. I would have paid $1 million more. Why didn't you come back to me? Right? All the time that happens to me.
Can you stop the screen share, Beau? Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry.
No problem. Anybody has a question?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Beau. So I guess my biggest question for you is, and I thank you for coming tonight. It was great. You gave a lot of information.
Sure.
Really valuable. I guess my question for you is, considering the type of market that we're in right now, that's very intense. And I know you said ignore the cap rate, which is fair. But when you're looking at some of the deals, a lot of the underwriting that I do a lot of really presses on, the next deal working, meaning like, I feel like we're doing a hot potato right now, right? So everyone's hitting up with those high prices. And, when you look at the IRR, sometimes the IRR is based on what you believe you're going to get, right? So if you're at 14%, a portion of it is on the cash flow for the deal. Sometimes the deal is very little cash flow. The rest of it is on what you believe is going to happen in the next, 2-3 years based on the market being hot, right?
Right.
So how do you advise people who have my mindset of trying to make the deal not pressed on what I believe is going to happen to the next guy, right? Leaving meat on the bone, but really trying to, get a good deal here. How do you propose someone like me approaches these types of deals?
I mean, conservatively, so you don't lose your ass, right? When I talk about paying max price, that doesn't mean try to win the deal, right? And go beyond your means or go beyond your return objectives or go beyond what you believe the input should be. All I'm saying is be true to your underwriting. And that means you're going to underwrite a ton of deals and not win because the market is nuts and the prices are high and most of them are not going to make sense to a lot of people. Now, it is the value of the asset because it is being bought, it is being appraised, it is being value add, and is being sold for a much larger profit in 3 to 5 years, right? So it works, it just works for someone else. So to answer your question, just, don't force a model to work because of FOMO. That's another big mistake. Because all of us, again, when we're on the social media, we're all friends and we're all friends here together with other people in multifamily. And we hear about someone closing here, closing there, and we get this, we get this craze. That's why car values have gone crazy, right? Everyone's buying cars left and right, and it's driving up more prices, and there's fewer coming to market, and there's fewer chips out there. And so it's a craze, and you can't fall for it. So you still have to use realistic underwriting terms, and whatever your max is that works for you, using your conservative terms, that's what you need to offer.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, listen, it's almost a depressing number of times you have to underwrite stuff, but I'm telling you, it's normal, right? Your goal is just to see as many of these deals as you can, because the bigger the more data points, the more deals you can go after, the higher likelihood is you're going to be able to close on something, and you're going to underwrite like crazy, and you're going to get turned down like crazy, and that's just part of it. The difference between you and the big boys is they're just underwriting more deals. And then when they get a partner, they can underwrite twice as many deals. And then when they have 2 juniors, they can underwrite 4 times as many deals, right? So you see how this goes. Right now you have limited time. As these guys get better and better and better, they're adding on to the team, and they're underwriting tons of deals at one time, and they're increasing probabilities.
Thank you for that, because I want to chime on that. Because when you just said that, it makes sense to me. Because before I was like, I'm not underwriting enough deals. But hold it, you're right. Some folks you got a team writing 4 deals. That's 4 times as many deals I can do in one day. That's
why people group together in partnerships and in syndications, right? I mean, 8 of you should get together and form a little fund, and you got 8 times as many deals putting together. As long as you have the same, criteria and underwriting standards, and you get on the same page about what you're going for, that's who's winning this. I never see a mom and pop win anymore. Very rarely in all my deals. It's tough, right? Mm-hmm. It's really tough. And then when the 8 of you get together, now you can talk about, hey, our group, our company, our LLC owns 150 units. Instead of, Lottie calling up and saying, I own 6 units, right? So you see the power, and you're creating a bio package together as a company with 8 bios on there and a much larger list of assets owned and the deals you've done and more letters of recommendation and all this stuff. This is why syndications rule the roost right now.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, James.
Okay. Hey, Beau, great stuff as usual, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Question for you. I've heard both sides of the fence on this. Maybe you can add some clarity. As a newer investor, you hear, hey, go big or go home. Why waste time with, 5 units when you can go after 100 units? When on the flip side, you hear, stay with, as a newer investor, stay with the smaller assets. You'll have less competition. You'll be able to have a better shot at them. What do you recommend for a newer investor?
Yeah, I mean, so let's talk about size of deals. Yes, it's true. There's less competition under 100 units, but there's still massive amounts of competition, right? It's not like, it goes from, 200,000 people to 200 people. Okay. There's 200,000 people in any type of criteria that you're looking for from across the country and other countries, by the way, that there are folks in different countries who will buy 20-unit deals in St. Augustine or Tallahassee or Daytona Beach all day long, right? They've got systems set up. So the competition ain't any less in big or smaller. However, in terms of returns, as you get into bigger deals, you get into bigger firms who need less return when they're buying them. because they will pay premiums to place more money at one time. So if you're $100 million fund, it just sucks to buy 80 unit deals, 50 unit deals. You can't do it because it takes the same intellectual labor to do a 50 unit deal as it does a 500 unit deal. So they will pay more per unit for a deal to place $100 million. Obviously, under 100 units, under 50 units, that doesn't exist. The returns are typically higher and the prices are lower for smaller deals, but there's not going to be any less competition. I personally, I love, kind of that 10 to 60 unit. That's just under when you start having site level management and salaries and all that stuff. And as long as you're buying in markets that have good management companies, I'd hire third party managers, have them take it over. Once you get big enough, then you can hire your own in-house management staff and you have a regional manager who takes care of it all for you. In fact, a lot of the folks who used to buy, I just did a video on this a few weeks ago, who used to buy nothing but 100+ unit deals have now created or changed their model to add on under 100 unit stuff, especially in markets they already own because they have management efficiencies in place. So they'll pick up 20, 30 unit deals and they become killers at it, right? You think about the guy who has $7 to $10 million liquid, who can buy 100+ unit deals, is now competing against you for 30 unit deals. Because all he's going to do is he's going to run it out of his 150 unit deal 5 miles down the road. Or he's going to have this person, that might be an hour away managing a few 100 unit deals, who starts managing that. And then they're going to start adding on in that market. So I definitely like those under 50, 60 unit deals. They're all good.
Thank you, Beau. Barbara.
And they're substantially less per unit. Currently in my Florida markets, I think it's $89,000 a unit for under 100 units, and it's $138,000 a unit for over 100 units.
Yeah, Barbara.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, when you have, of course, you're in Florida. I think Florida is a crazy market. Maybe, I don't know, is it compared to anything like what other market compares to it? I can't imagine. I think maybe, I don't know, it could be wrong. Maybe the closest thing could be Atlanta, something like that. But I just wonder, you're speaking about these things in your area, in your market, and I'm just wondering if what you just described, is that different in other markets? Because it sounds pretty funny that, you've got all these people, because
in terms of the number of inventory and number of owners?
Everybody wants to be in Florida. So I know people are just flocking to try to buy Florida. But do you think the other markets that's kind of a two-part question, are as active in that kind of a thing? And the second part is where are you getting these deals? Where are people getting these deals and getting these offers coming from?
Yeah, good questions. So in terms of, small amount of inventory in any one market and small number of trades in any one market and inventory owned by a small number of owners, that exists in every market. Obviously Atlanta will have more numbers of owners of the assets, but my point is the percentage of people who own them against the population, or what I'm saying is there's a lot less number of people who would even control Atlanta that also controls Florida. In fact, there's a lot of overlapping, right? Because Atlanta ain't far from Florida, from North Florida. And what you'll find is a lot of the companies that own Florida assets own in Georgia, right? And own in Alabama, and own in Texas, and they own in California and New York. The bigger companies are buying all over the country, right? The smaller folks, the under 50, 60 unit folks, usually will only cover like a region, like the Southeast. They'll cover Georgia, Alabama, Florida, that kind of thing, right? But to answer your question, there's always a few number of people who own all these assets, right? This is an elite group. You guys will become an elite group. There's a few number of them. 66%, however, of owners own only one asset. 83% of investors only own up to two assets. The other, so understand that. So 83% of investors own only 50% of the assets. The other 50% are owned by 17% of people. Right? So pretty substantial. And that I'm sure it's different in other markets a little bit, but my point is in every market, it's controlled that way. How I find listings, how other people find deals. So I'll talk about it from a broker standpoint. I'm big on algorithms. So I have for 20 years been building a CRM. And in my CRM, I have every single asset that exists in all the markets I cover. All 1,967 assets are in my CRM, and they're categorized by every physical thing you can think of. Number of units, number of beds, age, type of construction, who owns it, what they paid for it, amount of value add left, whether it's a class A, class B, parcel number, everything you can think of has a searchable field for each individual thing I just named, right? And then I track all the mortgages and when they end. And then I track average hold times of different types of investors. I know when syndications hold things. I know how long REITs hold things. I know how long mom and pops hold things. And so when I walk into my CRM, I create most logical future sale dates for every asset. So as soon as someone buys an asset in my market, I look up the type of owner, I look up the mortgage, I look up how big the asset is, because even certain size assets trade a certain amount of times, right? And I immediately put in a date in the future when I think it's going to sell. And then I'll usually call them 12 to 18 months ahead of time, right? So currently right now, the overall average I think is 47 months is the average hold time before it sells, but it's declining every year. I'm actually doing a study on it right now, going back to 2015, and I'll reveal it on social media pretty soon. My whole point is that I've got all kinds of intersecting things. I have when mortgages end, how long people hold them, type of asset, and I enter in all these dates. So when I come into my CRM every day, I look at my to-do list, and there will be between 2 and 5 people I'm supposed to call today that I think are most apt to sell based on entries that I put in last month, last year, or 5 years ago, combined with phone calls that I make. I make phone calls to investors all day long, trying to add value into their business. And they'll reveal, hey, Beau, by the way, we aren't selling until 2026 because our mortgage doesn't come up until then. Or, hey, Beau, this one's targeted for August of 2023. That's when our investor call is, right? So all these things I'm learning through phone calls and through algorithms, I'm entering them into my database. And that's why, if you've read my book, 93% of every closing over 10 units is done by a broker. Because brokers, all we do all day long is try to figure out which asset's going to sell before you do. We're masters at it. I'm not anything special. All brokers have their own ways of doing these things. A lot of the big brokers may not get as sophisticated as I do, but they have 17 juniors making phone calls all day long. Think about the kind of information you can gather with that kind of ability, right? So in my book, all I talk about in my book is your whole world on these 31 people in this phone call should be befriending every single multifamily broker in every market you cover and developing a relationship with them, creating a cadence in your CRM every 30 to 60 days, calling every broker on a rotating basis and building rapport, right? So initially you're introducing yourself, you're giving them your criteria, you're giving your bio package. Call number 2, you may say, hey, by the way, when we talked last, I forgot to mention on LinkedIn, I saw that you and I know Lottie together. Man, let me tell you a story about Lottie, right? And you talk a little bit more and you learn about what their hobbies are. And then the third and fourth phone call, you talk a little about business. You talk about, hey, how'd you do over the weekend, by the way? Did you do that triathlon you talked about? So you can imagine, let me just put this out there, Barbara. The most elite investors in the world that I talk about in my book right here. I've been following these guys for 20 years. You can imagine every 30 to 60 days, month after month, year after year, 5, 10 years of making phone calls to the same 55 brokers that cover the northern half of Florida. Who the hell do you think I think of as soon as that seller calls me up and says, Beau, my partner in ship and I are thinking about selling? I'm thinking about 18 or 20 guys that just are in love with me, that transact with me, that use me, that are just, they're we're like this. They ask about my family. They ask about my kids. We talk about hobbies. In fact, most of our phone calls only last 2 or 3 minutes. You know how when your girlfriends call you up, you may have the closer you are in friendships, the shorter your phone call is. Like when guys call each other, we're like, hey, R, what's up, man? Hey, what'd you do over the weekend? Cool. Hey, we still going to so-and-so? You still doing this? Yeah, great. Then we'll crack on each other about something. And then our phone call is done in like 2 or 3 minutes, right? And that's the kind of relationship I have with a lot of investors, right? Because we talk so often. But that's what this game's about. This is I'm giving you the inside look of how this shit works. It ain't on a website. 0 apartment complexes are sold on a website. The stuff you see on LoopNet and CoStar and MLS, that's up there only so I can gather data for my CRM. And occasionally you have the inexperienced seller who thinks that because their house sold on MLS, and by the way, all houses sell on MLS, that because his household on MLS, that's how his 25 unit complex sold. And he wants to see that on LoopNet, so I'll put it on LoopNet. And a damn one of them trades on LoopNet, right? Office buildings may sell on LoopNet. Office leases and retail leases, they trade on LoopNet. Apartment complexes are done just like this right here. Phone calls and emails directly to you. That's how the business is done. And it's all controlled by brokers. Not because brokers are special people, right? It's because it's common sense. If Barbara, you own a $5 million asset, why in the hell would you let Chris call you up and be like, yo, my name is Chris. I see that you own A, B, C apartments over on Main Street. Boy, what a beautiful apartment complex. Would you entertain an offer from me? And you're like, who is Chris? Like, why would you entertain an offer from Chris? No matter how many deals he owns, when you can call up Beau Beery and I'm going to bring you 15 offers in 3 weeks. And then I'm going to take 5 of those 15 to a best and final, and I'm going to creep them up even more for you. And then I'm going to help you pick one of those 5 who is a badass. I've known that dude for 10 years and I've watched him buy 6,000 units, right? So people who own 10 plus units, more particular 20 plus units, and the bigger the better, they're pretty savvy. Like they know that's how the best price comes, and that's why all of them call brokers. It just makes sense. So your whole game is about brokers. Put it in a CRM, literally input calls into your CRM on a rotating basis. If you try to remember to call 50 brokers, it ain't going to work. What'll happen is you'll just call the same 3 or 4 badasses, right? And everybody's calling the same 3 or 4 badasses. You're white noise to them, right? Unless you're calling them regularly. You want to call all of them, even the ones you don't like. You even want to call the single family salesperson who sold a complex last year. You want to call the guy who sells mostly office buildings and then twice a year he sells an apartment complex. Anyone who you've seen trade an apartment complex, you're entering them into your CRM, you're putting on a rotating call list, and then you're just calling them up. These are 2 to 10 minute phone calls, and you're just checking in. And you want to add value to that broker on every call. Real important. I did a video on this. Find on my channel. Every call, 95% of calls I get, guys, are, hey, Beau, it's Chris. What you got for me? You got anything I can make an offer on? You got anything you're working on? You got any BOVs you're doing that I can turn an offer in? Like, I get those calls, emails, and messages through social media all day long, right? But let me tell you the person I remember. The person I remember is they'll call me up, they'll shoot me an email, and they say, hey, Beau, I don't know if you know this yet, but my buddy just closed on so-and-so apartments yesterday. You probably don't even know about it, Beau, because they hadn't even hit the property appraiser yet. Just closed on this. I mean, that's a great data point. Thank you, right? Or, hey, Beau, we just put a pickleball court in on our asset. We got 6 leases the next week. Hey, Beau, we just figured out how to take our bad debt from 5% to 1%. Here's what we did. Oh, and hey, by the way, you got anything I make an offer on? I like that dude, right? He just added value to my life, to my business. I can now take some of that information, maybe share it with some other investors that make me look good. So every call, try to add value. Don't be that person that's white noising and asking for a deal every single time. We know what you want, right? We know you want to buy assets. You don't have to ask every time. Just like you know how I make money. I hardly ever call people and ask for a listing, right? They know what I do for a living. All I'm trying to do is add so much value in your business that I'm all you think about when it comes time to sell.
Woo! Fire. That's all I could say. It's fire,
Yeah.
bro. Woo! It's all about, listen, it's all about relationships. It's all about relationships.
Man.
It's all about. Nobody cares how much you know, how much you care, how much you know, until they know how much you care.
Yeah,
That's
and reputation during the deal, man. I mean, think about how many people are connected in a transaction, Lottie. Like when you're in a transaction and you close and everything, and you had great reputation in mind, you got the seller who's thinking about you, who owns other assets. And the easiest second transaction you'll ever do in your life is the deal you just closed with that seller and that broker. And that broker says, yo, Lottie, you just bought this. He also owns Pine Rush Apartments down the road. Would you buy that? Cool. Let me call up the seller. Hey, seller, Lottie just closed impeccably. You own Pine Rush Apartments right down the road. How about it? I mean, let's just see what he says on an offer. I mean, he just won against 12 other guys. Let's see what he does on this one. All right, cool. Hey, listen, I'm not going to give you the listing. I'm not ready to list it yet. But if he pays this, sure. Easiest second. And he would have never done that had you not just transacted with him, right? Right. But that seller also has attorneys that watched how you operated during that transaction. He has property managers who toured the deal with you, who are friends with other property managers who manage other assets who may be coming for sale. And there's leasing agents, and there's phase 1 consultants, and there's property inspection people. All these people are watching how you act during a transaction, and whether you closed or not, or whether you did something incorrectly or not. And they're all friends with other people who are in the same trade and know other folks that are investors. Phase 1 guys know tons of sellers, right? Leasing age. I mean, even the smallest, most, possibly, let's call it smallest member of a transaction is in the business and they know other people, right? You just want mojo out there, dude. You want people, you want even a property inspector who's at a nonprofit event and they overhear someone behind them thinking about selling something. Oh, listen, I just did an inspection for Barbara on a transaction over in Titusville. Man, she was nice. I mean, closed. I talked to the broker, closed on time, was wonderful to work with, paid me before I even got her the bill. If you got, that's who you want to call. If you got, she buys in this market, you should call up Barbara. I don't know her number. Call up Beau Beery. He knows her. He did the broker. He did the deal with her. Shit like that happens, right? It's that butterfly effect, man. You put that stuff out there. That's how these deals come from all directions. I hear these stories all the time.
So now we have two questions, Beau. So that's it. This is the last 2 questions. Okay. Go ahead, Art.
Oh, okay. So Beau, do you have any recommendations for like a software to quickly analyze, especially in this current market, like where you can do a quick offer and kind of accurately know what you're looking at to make these offers and speed up the process of, looking at deals?
Yeah. I'm not a software fan because oftentimes you can't see the calculations being done, and I like to see things. I'm going to give you a different alternative. So there's a group called Despard Analytics, DESPARD. Despard Analytics is a group of mostly young, super smart, analytical nerds that are, that used to be acquisition people for various multifamily companies. They've formed a company, and all they do is underwriting and marketing packages and other packages for buyers, investors, appraisers, brokers. So like when I get 3 listings in 1 week, I can't handle 3 listings. I can only underwrite one of them, right? So I'll call up Despard and I'll pay them to create a model for me, and they'll create a model for me. And that way I can get the listings in time, right? Because the sellers want to know what their stuff is worth. Now, what I'll do is over time now, I have a model that they've created just about for everything in their Excel spreadsheets, right? And so I'll use those models over and over again. And then if I come across a transaction that's totally different, like I just sold a completely vacant 116 unit building, which I haven't done in a long, long time. So I had to create a full new model, and it also had a development component to it. And I just didn't have the time to do that. So I call up, Val is the guy who owns it, but he's got a bunch of other analysts. And so you have a phone call with them. I said, listen, here's the model I want. I want a 5-year model. Here's the rent comps. They'll do rent comps for you too as well. I prefer to do it myself. I'll tell them, hey, I want a 5% vacancy. I want property taxes at 80% assessed value. I'll give him all the different metrics. He'll create the model. He'll send it to you. You'll review it together on a Zoom call. You'll point out things that may be wrong or that you want tweaked. He'll tweak them again, send them back to you, and then you have it. But it's an Excel spreadsheet. I love Excel because you can see the formulas. You can see where your error is. You can track it down. You can figure that stuff out. It's expensive, okay, depending on the model, but then you own it forever, right? Most of them run $500, $600, $700, but then you'll own it, right? And as you come across different scenarios, it's worth paying for a new model, right? Let's say you buy a 20-unit deal that has the ability to develop another 6 units on it. Right now, you're talking about construction and construction draws, and so they create a timeline and everything. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay.
These guys do nothing but underwriting all day long. These are guys who have been with companies, bigger than you drive by in a day, doing models for you.
Hey, Beau,
Appreciate
Javier
that.
here. Can I ask you a final
One
question?
second, Javier. 1 second. We got someone's
sorry
hand.
about that.
Go ahead, Kenneth.
Hey, Beau, thanks for all the great information. Just also want to clarify a point. So you said in the beginning, like about deal flow, only about 6% or 10% of the
6 to 8.
6 to 8% of the the properties go to market. But then you said deals change every 36, 48, or basically 3 to 5 years. So my math tells me, 20% a year. That makes it every 5 years. Are there just deals that never come to market, or how do you sort of explain a discrepancy, or how do you sort of calculate that deal flow then?
Say it again.
Like, say there's 100 properties in the market. You were saying like only 6 or 8% of them come to market a year, but then you said deals turn over. Like you said, 48 months, I think, or 40 to 48 months. And so are this properties never coming to market? So, but if a deal's coming to market every 48 months and 100.
Oh, no. Let me clarify. So of the deals that sell, the average hold time of that one is 48 months. But you have to understand, these are not people who come to market every 4 years. These are people who may have held only 2 years, 1 year, 38 years. I'm tracking big data. And when you take the closing dates of everything that has sold and you do the calculations, the average hold time has been 48 months. It's not accurate for any one property or any one market. That's just the average hold time of everything that has been selling in my markets. To what I'm telling you though, is that every year, 6 to 8% of inventory trades. I've seen it as high as 12 in Orlando, depending on a hot market. And I've seen it as low as 4 in Gainesville. So what's throwing off the math for you is that each deal has a much different hold period than the average is revealing. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's just screw my head. Thank you.
No problem.
Javier, last question, Javier. Last question. This is it.
All right. Thank you, Laddie. Thank you. Mr.
Mhm.
Beau, so it's not every day that you have a legendary broker like you.
Come on.
No, I'm serious. I'm serious. So I think it'd be fun, if we take 60, 90 seconds and we role play a cold call for a seller. I'll be the seller, you're the broker, and
Okay.
60, 180 seconds. and see, you know, kind of how you deal with these kind of things. Are you up for it?
Yeah. You talking about you have like a role you want to play right now, or you talking?
I'm
me to come
a
up with one?
seller. I'm a seller.
Uh-huh.
I own a, you know, a 50-unit apartment, and you're
Yep.
cold calling me. You're both, right?
I'm cold calling you.
You're cold
You
calling
mean
me.
you mean for a listing?
For a listing or an offer, or however you want to take it. You know, whatever you do.
I don't ask for listings at all. They call me. That's the difference.
So you don't
see,
cold call?
There is no cold call. I know all 998 people like the back of my hand.
How did you first start off in your career?
So the way I started off was I worked on this is what I did. This is my phone call that I did 998 times in a row. And by the way, I shouldn't say I don't do cold calls. Javier, if a guy owns 5,000 units in California and then buys an apartment complex for the first time in my market, that is kind of a cold call because I'm calling him to introduce myself. And here's how that phone call goes. Hey, Javier, my name is Beau Beery. I'm with Multifamily Advisors. I'm based over in Florida. I see you just bought XYZ apartments over on Main Street. Do you have any interest in adding to your portfolio over there in Jacksonville? Right? Now, let me just tell you what I just did there. Every broker on the planet is calling Javier and saying, hey, my name is Beau Beery. Saw you just bought XYZ. Dude, you should resell that. I could get you $20,000 unit tomorrow. You should list that with me right now, right? That's what every broker's doing, right? Especially the nationals. They got their juniors making the dials. I just called them and asked them a question no one's ever asked them in the history of the world. Hey, do you want to buy more assets? And I can almost feel when I'm making the phone call, I can almost feel the tension for that first 5 seconds. I can almost feel I'm getting ready to say, hell no, I'm not selling, because everyone that's what he's looking for. And then I say, hey, do you want to add to your portfolio? Hey, do you want to buy, are you looking to add? Are you looking to buy more units? And then you can almost feel it on the phone, like, well, yeah, what you got? And then I go and I say, well, listen, I've got a couple things I can talk to you about, but before I, run ad nauseum, I'd love to ask you some questions and take down your criteria. And then I have a stock list of questions. Number of units you look to buy at. Do you buy market rate of student housing? Do you have any age restrictions? What kind of value add do you have? I have a whole list of questions.
I've seen that form you have on your website. It's killer.
That's right.
Yeah.
I asked all those questions there, right, on the phone. And I'm taking information, I'm taking down his data, and then I explain my process. I explain how I have all the inventory in my CRM. I explain how as soon as I hang up with him, I'm entering his data into a buyer database so that when I get listings, I can bring it directly to him. We hang up, I send him an email confirming the criteria. Thanks for talking. And the next 9 phone calls, all I'm doing is adding value. I very rarely ask for listings. All I'm trying to do is I'm trying to be someone who, when they see me on their phone and they see Beau Beery, they answer the phone because they're not threatened. I'm not going to ask them to sell. They know what I do. I make a living selling real estate. I'm just trying to stuff their brains, their life, their aura with value. I want to make them more money. I want to increase their NOI. I want to increase their value. And if I'm in their face enough, like you should be in the broker's face enough, they're going to think of me, and I'm going to think of you.
So last part of the question. So you've spoken with every single owner, and you
all 998.
Right. And you follow up, they know you, you know them.
Yep.
So how do you have the conversation of, hey, they call you up and say, hey, I've been thinking of selling. What do you think? How do you turn it into, okay, let's analyze the property. Let's see what what you're working with. What's your process there?
Yeah. So then I say, hey, listen, I can turn around, evaluation this week. All I need from you is your rent roll and your T12, right? And then just give me a list.
Boom.
I just keep it simple. I don't even ask for, I want him to say yes, right? Just give me your rent roll and your T12 and tell me any kind of CapEx you've done that's major, right? Mm-hmm. And that's it. And so he sends me his stuff. I do all the underwriting. We come back and we have a conversation. I always tell him the max list price that we should consider. And then I give him an idea of what the range of offers might be based on different underwriting methods a buyer may use, right? Mm-hmm. And then from there, we have a discussion. I kind of get his feedback on what he thinks of that number and that price. We talk about what kind of listing he wants to do. Does he want this full on gamut, Beau Beery, crazy marketing video, professional photography, every website, email blasted? Do you want it to where people in Zimbabwe are going to learn about your asset?
Mhm.
Or do you want more of a just database driven approach? Like some guys don't want their staff to find out. They don't want their employees to find out. And so now it's just database driven, right? I just create an OM and now it's just phone calls and emails, right? So we have a discussion about that as well.
So your list, so in your business, final question, I promise, it's just, again, a legend. So what would you say last year was the percentage of deals you closed, quote unquote, off market, so non-listed deals you brought the buyer, and deals you represented the seller? How does that break down?
I don't work with buyers. Let me grab my computer real quick.
Javier's gonna be the last question, Javier.
Absolutely.
You never, as a broker, unless you're starting off, it's very difficult to work with a buyer, right? So as you're making phone calls to these brokers, what you're doing is, guys on this call, you're giving them your criteria. They're not going to go out and look for deals for you. They're going to plug your criteria into their system so that when they get listings, you're going to see them. It doesn't make sense for any broker, unless they're a newbie, to work with one person and their one person's criteria and go out and find a deal. If I did that, I'd only do 1 or 2 deals a year. The best thing I can do for you is to try to go and get any listing I can, 10 units, 150 units, 300 units, 5 million, 50 million, student housing, market rate, whatever, because as a broker, any listing I get, I'm going to sell. If I just work with a buyer, we may make 52 offers and never do a deal.
Never get paid, right?
Right. So let me pull
I want
up.
to say thank you, Beau, for this time.
Yeah,
we
no
really ran over, but you.
Javier, call me tomorrow and I'll give you the answer on that.
Oh, Javier got your number. Javier, man.
Thank you, Beau. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Can anybody please turn your camera on? Everybody please turn your camera on, please.
Sorry?
Turn everybody who has the cameras on, please. They take a picture. They take Kenneth Hines called the Zoomie. Everybody turn your cameras on. Thank you. Sia, are you there, Sia, senior? Okay. 1, 2, 3, smile. Oh, Angel, is that halo on your head, Angel? The halo. Thank you. Hold on, we wait for Angel's halo. Thank you. Don't play me, Angel. Everybody smile. One more time again. Thank you. Beau, I want to say thank you for giving a this is more like a conference, right? It's like a session here, right?
Good turnout.
Yes, I appreciate the time, energy, and effort.
And
also, say it again.
This is number in there.
Barbara, please put your information in the chat. It's beaubeery.com. I can tell you that much, right?
Hey, I wanted to say, if you will, hey, Angel, if you'll call me tomorrow, because, I would love to kind of, work out some of our stuff and talk it out further. And I would love to give you any guidance. I want to hear some of your story stuff. So feel free. Lottie's got my phone number. I'd love to talk.
Yeah, I can probably find it. I got some friends that work with you.
Okay.
But
right,
I'm
cool.
on my way to Denver tomorrow. I'm going to the Best Ever Conference.
Best Ever Conference.
Okay, cool. Anyway,
right.
I love good dialogue. So please give me a shout.
So once again, everybody, I want to say thank you for coming to Financial Independence through Small Multifamily Investing, and all those who are going to the Best Ever Conference. Thank you for running. Have a safe travels. Thank you and good night.